Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll just give it another 30 seconds or so, just to make sure that everybody who is planning to come has had a wee bit of a chance to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, so the numbers kind of settling, so I think we'll just get started. So hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. It is now the afternoon. My name is Stephen Thompson. I'm the Events and Community Manager at the Data Lab. And today's event is part of an ongoing series of webinars that we run through the Data Lab community, where we invite members to come on and kind of speak about interesting projects and initiatives that they've been working on. So today's session is part of our Sustainability Month, which has been running throughout July. We had a meetup in Aberdeen earlier in the month. We've got the webinar today, and we've got another webinar coming up towards the end of the month. So check out the Data Lab community for a wee bit more information on that. We're recording today's webinar, so you'll be able to revisit this session afterwards, and we'll send out a link to you once it's available. It'll go up on the Data Lab's YouTube channel. And if you're interested, you can kind of browse that. We've got most of our previous events and webinars are recorded and up there. If you've got any questions this afternoon, please do make sure to post them in the Q&A, which you should see at the bottom of your Zoom portal. And we'll have plenty of time at the end to run through those. So we'll try to get through as many of them as possible. So please do pop them in the chat, in the Q&A, sorry, and we'll get to those at the end. Most of you who are here will probably already be familiar with the Data Lab community, but just in case you haven't joined yet, please do make sure to sign up using the QR code, which should be in the corner of your screen. It's completely free to use, and free to join, and is a great place to kind of stay connected with the data and AI community. If you can't see the QR code on the screen, just head to community.thedatalab.com and you can kind of sign up for free there. So, as I said, today's session we're talking about sustainability, and I'm delighted to introduce the topic of sustainability we're focusing on throughout the month. So, delighted to have today Rory Higgins-Lavery, who's joining from the Edinburgh Climate Change Institute, and Shan Phillips, who's joining from the School of Informatics at the University of Edinburgh. And they're both here this afternoon to discuss the Co-Benefits Atlas, which is an interactive data visualization tool which is designed to allow you to better understand the co-benefits of climate action. So I'm not going to take up any more of your time this afternoon, and I'll pass you over to Rory and Shan to explain exactly what all of that means, and I'll see you at the end for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks everyone for joining this event on the co-benefits of reaching net zero, where we have been, alongside the wider team, developing a methodology that examines the implications on wider society from climate action in the UK. So firstly, what are co-benefits and why are they important? Co-benefits are the third dimension of climate impact, which are typically under-researched. Whenever we look at net zero interventions like heat pumps, we often examine the carbon abatement and the financial consequences. So how much greenhouse gas are we avoiding? What are the energy bill savings that we can see as a result? But there are also a lot of wider impacts from net zero actions that can be really meaningful and have a big impact on society. Things like more livable cities, less air pollution, etc. And these are important because they're quite difficult to quantify, which is why they're discussed less and researched in a different way. They're usually addressed more qualitatively. And what we've been doing here at the Edinburgh Climate Institute, partnered with the School of Informatics, is to try to quantify these difficult to quantify concepts. So the 11 co-benefit types that we do model cover mostly the transport and building sector, alongside things like diet change. And these have been selected for a few different reasons. They're certainly not exhaustive or comprehensive. They are a selection of some of the impacts, but they were selected depending on which were the most defensible and robust to model methodologically. So there was good data availability at local levels to investigate these co-benefit types, and as well as that, they were informed by stakeholder discussions about what would be most useful for business cases and local authority actors to see the impact of different net zero actions. In terms of how we model each of those 11 co-benefit types, the Climate Change Committee in the UK have been working to outline trajectories to reach net zero by 2050. And in order to do that, they've mapped out certain actions which will need to occur, from technologies like heat pumps to switches to electric vehicles and active travel. We've collected a lot of data across 46,000 local areas in the UK, informing where those interventions are likely to take place and what their effect is likely to be. And each of those co-benefit types are modeled according to the high-level processes shown here. So we examine an individual area, a data zone, or an LSOA, depending on where you are, which is a community of around 1,000 people. We then model the baseline scenario. So if we take the example of noise reduction, we model the baseline noise from car travel in the data zone from things like travel surveys, car ownership rates, engine types, and associated decibel levels. We then modeled the net zero scenario with, say, a greater proportion of electric vehicles, which have quieter engines. And the difference in decibel levels we can value according to the UK Green Book, so the government-backed methodologies for economic quantification. So that gives us a pound value that is the difference between the baseline and the net zero scenario, which we can attribute to different damage pathways and beneficiaries. This is another way of looking at that process. Again, if we look at noise, there are various pathways. For sleep disturbance, this occurs in different areas because of reduced noise pollution and has a knock-on impact on health outcomes. We can value the amenity benefit of reductions in noise pollution because there are more pleasant living environments and quality of life is therefore improved. So these are the tertiary benefits that are quite under-researched and conceptual that we've been quantifying in a place-specific manner according to these damage pathways. And I won't dwell too long on this slide. It's essentially just to highlight that there are robust methodologies behind each of these 11 co-benefit types that we have identified. And we have published all of this on our online data atlas for people to investigate and to give confidence in the data that it is all Green Book approved methodologies. It can therefore be used in policy-making decisions, and these are quite strict best practice modeling procedures that we're following. So once we've done that across the 11 co-benefit types, across the 46,000 small areas in the UK, we can aggregate across all of these areas to tell the high-level picture across the UK. And some immediate things jump out at you. There are sizable, immediate positive benefits of climate action on wider society. And while the majority comes from one or two co-benefit types, there is quite a diverse distribution of impacts. A second noticeable impact is that these benefits occur immediately. So there isn't really a strict lag time with some of these changes. So while things like health benefits do accumulate, over time. There are also immediate impacts which uh, can speak to different audiences, so shorter electoral cycles, things like long payback times for heat pumps can speak to different audiences than immediate health impact from reductions in air pollution, leading to lower levels of diseases, better quality of life, etc. The third main takeaway in this graph is that there are some negative externalities that we've modeled. We can see the uh, dark red congestion pathway initially starts off as a benefit. We've modeled the rebound effects of switches to electric vehicles, and we can see that initially, while there is a decrease in road traffic, with current policy projections, it's estimated that there will be a net increase in road transport by cars because of a focus on shift to electric vehicles and road transport, rather than, say, a greater emphasis on active travel. The main negative externality, however, is called hassle cost or longer journey times, and that is the effect of active travel journey taking longer than the same journey would take by car. So we can estimate the amount of time that it takes and costs the individual. The important thing to bear in mind with that co-benefit type is that it doesn't exist in isolation. It is essentially a product of the shift in mode, so it exists alongside physical activity benefits, and it doesn't stand alone, even though it's presented separately. So that is how the distribution of our current pathway to net zero looks like across the UK temporally. Uh, this is a representation of the distribution of the noise co-benefit geographically. And again, some immediate insights where the per capita benefits are much greater in urban areas. So this is essentially a population density map of the UK. But there are a lot of machinations underneath the surface on things like car ownership rates, different road types in different regions, and different car types as well. So there are quite detailed maps on road speeds and associated noise levels, and the greater the noise co-benefit impact occurs when there is greater proximity to certain road types in different areas. So we can see that, it's quite intuitive that there would be more benefits of avoided noise in urban areas than rural areas. But what's really exciting is being able to put a figure on this and examine it and have some backed evidence to show that story. So we've covered briefly the methodology and an overview of what some of the results look like. But in terms of actually using the analysis and the modeling to create some impact, we've identified certain projects that we've used the co-benefit results for. It's more applicable in some areas than others there, but it does speak to a broad audience where things like cost benefit analyses, it can have a great impact in terms of actually flipping from a negative net present value to a positive net present value if it's included. And for certain economic scenarios like heat pump deployment, including co-benefits really is the only way to make the investment case favorable for things like blended funding models. It also speaks to the general public instead of simply economic analyses. So it can describe the benefits of climate action in a way that are less abstract. So instead of carbon mitigation and overall abatement, which kind of exists globally and isn't as attributable, we can look at specific neighborhoods and say it is projected that there will be this reduction in likelihood of developing asthmatic diseases because there is this reduction in car travel. So it can be used in that way to garner greater political support and public uptake in general. As well as that, since it is Green Book compliant, it can be used for policy-making decisions, and also it's in general just an under-researched area. So it's quite important that we start to investigate some of these wider impacts on society and the knock-on effects. Because as we can see, there are really sizable benefits, significant impacts that affect different subsets of the population in different ways. And the way in which we approach our transition to net zero will carry these implications. And if we don't kind of investigate the most optimal scenarios, we could take suboptimal routes to net zero. And here are just a couple of examples of our case studies that we've used the analysis for in Scotland and in England primarily, where it informed business cases for local area energy plans in Westminster and Cumberland, and also speaks to the just transition element of some of these larger scale actions that local authorities are trying to implement. So we can see that in things like the heat zones in Edinburgh, Mid Lothian and East Lothian. We have modelled the impact of connecting to district heating networks, and then examined the co-benefit impact with inequality impact at deprivation levels across different communities, and see which way we could deploy this in a way that's most societally just as well as environmentally beneficial. Outside of those use cases, we're trying to develop how applicable this research is to wider audiences. And to that end, we've partnered with the School of Informatics, who have been developing a data atlas website, which hosts all of the outputs from the net zero pathway, as well as all of the data behind the modeling, so the socio-economic variables like income levels, age, EPC bands at the data zone level across the UK. So it's essentially a really large data repository that visualizes and communicates the stories that the data is trying to tell, and is interactive in a way that you can explore the co-benefit outputs, look at different areas, and export the data to use for your own cases as well. So to that end, I will pass across to my colleague Shan, who will show you the data atlas itself. Thanks.
Hello, hi. So yeah, as Stephen mentioned, I'm with the School of Informatics and specifically the VisHub Lab, where I'm a data visualization designer. And I've been working on the Atlas website, which I will share now. So hopefully everyone can see my screen there. And can you see it?
No, I can't see it at the moment, Shan, sorry. I think it's loading now. Yeah, there it is.
Great. So yeah, a few things to point out about the website, that it's a beta version at the moment, so there's still a few elements under construction. And some of the pages also take a while to load, so just give it a bit of time, and we're working on speeding things up. As you go through the atlas, there's feedback forms, so if you notice anything or you'd like to point things out, just leave us some feedback. So as everyone can see here, this is the landing page, and part of the atlas is we want to display as much of the data as possible and encourage exploration, as well as give lots of explanations as we go through. So the main page, we have like a waffle chart here, which just shows the distribution of the co-benefits. If we scroll down, we have the different pages here. So we have a page for each of the 11 co-benefits. We have pages for each of the local areas, and we have pages for different socio-economic factors that may be affecting the kind of climate action on different demographics. We also have an interactive map, which Rory displayed during his presentation, and that kind of combines all the data which you can explore and select the different components to look at there. We're also displaying some stories about the data. So far we've got one story up here, but we're looking to add more kind of in-depth analysis into like how the co-benefits are affecting local areas and local communities. So again, there's a feedback form if you have any suggestions for that. We've got a search bar, so we can like search for local authorities and navigate through that way. Down at the bottom, we just have a brief overview of the different local authorities, which we can kind of toggle between different nations and giving kind of the value of co-benefits that each area is predicted to receive. And then on the right, we've got the comparison of the co-benefits. So as we can see here, the physical activity is producing high benefit value there. So there's a lot of pages and a lot to go through, so I'll keep it quick. And I've just got the Edinburgh page up. So this is just an example of one of the pages that we have. And here at the top, we just have a kind of brief overview of the summary statistics and some charts here to show distributions, what kind of co-benefits this area is likely to receive. We've got a light gray color, which is a comparison to, you can compare to other nations along the top here. So we can compare the average in Edinburgh to the average across England. We've got a time aspect, so how these co-benefits in Edinburgh might change over time, and the breakdown of the different co-benefits here. And then down at the bottom, we kind of break it down by socio-economic factors. So there's kind of in-depth exploration here into where the co-benefits might likely end up in terms of demographics. So yeah, keeping it brief, you can kind of navigate between the pages up at the top, and we're looking to integrate more like interactive elements so that you can explore the pages at ease. So yeah, keeping it brief, I'll probably leave it there for the demo, but we're offering one-on-one tutorial sessions for the Atlas. So if you're interested in having a longer demo and if you've got specific questions, I'll send the link in the chat, and you can sign up for a session with one of my colleagues who'll take you through it. Yeah, so I'll stop presenting there, and I think we'll move on to the questions section now.
Brilliant. Thank you both for discussing the platform. It looks like there's a lot of work gone into it, and the Atlas itself looks like it's absolutely full of information. So don't be like me, and I tried to access it last week and was very impatient. But if you give it sort of 30 seconds or so, it comes up. I can see why, because of the amount of information that's on it. We've got quite a lot of questions coming through now, so I'll just start working through those. And we'll see how we get on. We've still got plenty of time. So if you've got any questions that you haven't asked yet, just pop them in the Q&A. So you kind of covered this towards the end of your section, Rory, but James is asking, who do you see benefiting the most from the Atlas platform? Is it aimed at public sector, individuals, or private sector, or is it you kind of alluded to that it's got benefits for everybody, really?
Yeah, well, what we've been doing with the Atlas recently is just trying to promote it and see what audiences interact with it in different ways. So there are, like you mentioned, a few different actors, but it does speak primarily to things like business cases and investment actors, essentially funding models with government input, because these kind of numbers do appeal to more socially minded endeavors, but it's really kind of local governments, local authorities, and central governments that will be interested in the public benefit. rather than kind of hard returns on investment. So there's kind of a clear rationale in terms of business cases there, but there are also, I think I mentioned earlier, quite a lot of interest we've had from people looking to make the case to local councillors directly to invest in climate action in a way that kind of is less political. You know, it's less pro net zero explicitly. It's not solely environmentally focused. It's saying that there are these win-win opportunities, and these kind of no regret actions would benefit a wide range of stakeholders. And I think someone put it in the chat about um, some organizations might instigate the action, but other organizations will benefit. And that's a big part of the analysis. There are all of these indirect benefits and direct impacts. So if you cycle to work, you're getting direct health benefits from that transition to a climate action, but you're also creating indirect benefits for wider society where you're reducing congestion, you know, you're reducing air pollution, and that has a knock-on effect on, you know, people's daily lives, but also things like NHS expenditures. So it's a complex picture that it speaks to. And we're hoping to just develop and see how we can engage with as broad an audience as possible.
And I guess a follow-up question from James related to what you're saying. Do you think that as the general public become more aware of the co-benefits of climate action, that they'll could potentially become more of a reason for people to buy into climate action because, you know, where they otherwise might have been complacent, that they realize that there are more benefits to them personally when these things are done?
Yeah, definitely. I think so. One of the important points about the timing of this analysis is that, you know, the progress to date has been relatively non-intrusive in terms of decarbonisation. So most of our mitigation gains have been in the energy sector, transitioning to renewables. And we're coming, you know, reading the CCC's guidance, it's quite clear that in the coming years, we're going to need to start making more lifestyle changes. So things like reduced car usage and retrofitting your homes, those more hard to unlock decarbonisation actions that are going to be less easily sold, you know. So there does need to be a rationale to speak to why people should do this, you know, because climate isn't the only motivation, that's clear. There are economic benefits, not always, but there are also clear social benefits that we need to speak to communicate that message as well.
Brilliant, thanks. Neil is asking, great information, Rory, thank you. What was the general conclusion on co-benefits of connecting to district heating for vulnerable communities?
Yeah, it was very interesting analysis. It was essentially looking at the heat zones across 3 local authorities, and the headline number was £2.1 billion in societal value. A sizable portion of that was in carbon abatement value, which is a additional co-benefit type. But there were three main co-benefits aside from that, which directly had an impact on the vulnerable communities, which were excess cold reductions, air quality, and dampness reductions. So people's homes, by connecting to a more stable and consistent supply of heat with assumption that the price was more fixed and regulated, which it is under heat networks, leads to health improvements from more maintainable internal temperatures. So that means that elderly populations we found whenever we ran the model were more likely to receive the benefits because they tend to live in larger homes, they are more fuel power, and they're more vulnerable to those health deficiencies. There were also some interesting findings where uh, it wasn't always necessarily the income deprived groups who were the most who received the most co-benefit value, because some of these factors like age, propensity to illness, and larger homes mean that some of the benefits are more attributable to different subsets of the population as well. So it's quite a complex picture because there are so many variables that we look at. But the clear story from that analysis was that there are a lot of really significant economic and social benefits from heat network deployment.
Brilliant, thank you. And I guess this is the data lab community, so we've got quite a lot of questions here asking specifically around the data side of things. So just to get started, somebody's asking, what data sources does the Atlas platform rely on? Are you working with data sets that existed already, or is it stuff that's been created for the purposes of the Atlas, or a mix of both?
So we haven't really developed any novel methodologies. What we've been doing mostly is taking best practice methodologies. I think there was a question in the chat about what the Green Book is. It's recommendations on how to value interventions economically that can be used in policy making decisions. So we've collated a bunch of these methodologies and we've been able to apply it to specific areas in the UK. So we haven't really developed anything particularly new, but we've pulled together a lot and used real world data to model it. So what we've collected are all of the socioeconomic variables, which aren't modeled. They're collected through things like EPC records, census data, etc. And then pulled it all together and applied it with a climate lens when typically it's more for things like business investment.
And a couple of questions around the data. So is the data that feeds into the platform available for others to access? And Matthew's also asking, is it possible for people to contribute data to the platform if people have got data that they think would be of use?
I think, yeah, absolutely. It's not possible to directly upload anything to the Atlas website, but what we are doing as a team is trying to engage in updating and evolving the methodology. So if there are interesting use cases that we can look at with our model and analyze and try to help create an argument for climate action, please do get in touch with us. You can reach the Atlas team through the website. We'll put a link in the chat as well. And there's also just ongoing projects that if you're interested in feeding into, there's things like community perspectives on how co-benefits affect their decision-making process. And then we support local authority action with the Scottish Climate Intelligence Service as they try to build capacity and encourage climate action as well. So yeah, if there's anything that we could help with or you have any queries, please do let us know.
So yeah, if you've got data or you want to ask any questions, definitely get in touch. So Malcolm is asking more to do with the insights that you've drawn from the work. But if car usage goes up, it will almost certainly mean that cyclists feel less safe on the roads again, unless we have better cycling infrastructure. Does the model account for these sorts of complexities?
Good question. Yes and no. In that specific case, no, there is not a feedback between increased road usage and accidents. What we have are the projected changes. We have baseline travel patterns and then the accidents of, it's called road safety in the model. We can value the impact of greater road usage on cyclists, but we don't have the kind of really nitty-gritty details on, things like cycle paths, how those are deployed, whether or not they will have an impact on road safety. It's essentially a function of road traffic. And while we do account for future changes in road traffic, the interlinkages between the co-benefit types are something we still need to work on.
And Matthew's asking if the forecast that the platform kind of visualizes, will these evolve to show the impact of potential changes in policy in the future, for example, like by public policy?
Hopefully, yes. So right now it's based purely on the CCC's seventh carbon budget forecast, and with the updated data that they output semi-regularly, we can run the model again. We ran it previously for the sixth carbon budget, and then we updated it for the seventh. And essentially, it's a different package of measures depending on the UK's progress in reaching net zero. They adjust what technologies are deployed. And one of the interesting things about the analysis is that we could see the difference across the policy changes. So there was a greater emphasis on electric vehicles in the more recent advice, rather than a greater emphasis on active travel previously. So we saw the physical activity decline quite significantly, and the things like congestion impacts turn negative as a result. So with new carbon budgets coming out, we're also hoping to run it for the devolved nations carbon budgets. So say for Scotland, there's a different trajectory to reach net zero by 20, excuse me, by 2045, and it's a different collection of measures. So there are quite sizable divergences that we are hoping to examine, but at the moment we don't have any plans to run it so far.
Brilliant, thank you. And we've got a question for yourself, Shan, from Malcolm, who's asking more specifically about the visualizations. It's asking, how did you select the visualizations that you used in the atlas? Did you hold user forums or code design sessions?
Yeah, so I joined the project like kind of after it started. So Jinri, who's in the chat, might want to add something to my answer. But there was, yeah, user workshops, kind of a whole series of them throughout the last year or so, where we looked at different scenarios, like who might be using the atlas, what might the level of data literacy and data visualization literacy be. So we want to make the platform accessible to the most amount of people. Therefore, we want to keep the visualizations as straightforward and as kind of accessible as possible. So we always kept that in mind, and went through some iterations of trying out different charts and getting feedback, which is ongoing as well as we're still doing interviews and kind of doing some academic papers. But yeah, Jinri, if you want to add anything else in the chat, please go ahead. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Shan. So we've just got a few questions left before we wrap up. So, so somebody's asking, it's been there for a while, so I feel like we should answer this one, is can you share a bit more about how you've quantified the distributional impact of the diet change co-benefit?
Sure. So the dietary change is a shift from baseline consumption of different food types to the projected changes of a more carbon-friendly diet. So those are most notably a 31% reduction on average in meat and dairy consumption per person through to 2050, and replacing those animal products with more legumes, fruit and vegetables. So the same calorific intake, but a less carbon intensive diet. The health benefits are modeled through what's called a relative risk approach, where we can look at the age of inhabitants in a local area, collected through things like the census records, and then using published statistics on incidence of diseases, comparing them with surveys on dietary consumptions by age group and sex. We can then infer a probability of what reduction in likelihood there will be that they develop, say, heart disease or colonic cancer. So it's a reduction in disease leading to longer life expectancy, which is then valued according to the UK Green Book, which puts a monetary value on 1 year of human life, rather morbidly.
Right, thank you. So on that note, I think we are out of time, so we're going to wrap up there. but there's lots of chat in the chat there. So we've recorded the session today, and we'll make sure that we get the recording out to everybody. So if you would like to rewatch any of this, or you've got any questions that haven't been answered, please do get in touch with Rory and Shan. There's a few links in the chat as well that we'll make sure that we include in the follow-up email. So if you're looking to sign up for a tutorial, or you've got data that you'd like to contribute, or you'd like to kind of get a bit more information, we'll make sure there's contact details in the email that follows later this week. For the rest of this month, we're still focusing on sustainability. We've got another webinar coming up on the 31st, which is around sustainability, using data to drive sustainability in tourism and hospitality. So check that out in the community if you're interested. And otherwise, just a final thank you again to yourself, Rory and Shan, and for everybody for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
See you later on.